Oh no. Oh, freaking wind. 3 bars. Better than nothing, I guess. Ugh. It's too freaking windy lately. Today's only supposed to be 10 to 20 though. So I can at least fish, I think. It was blowing 35 sustained gusts up to 60 for 3 days in a row. So I suspect the fishing is gonna be slow for a day or two after all of that. But I wanna go out, see what it looks like, and just get back on the water. I did fish 2 of those days. Might have been a bad idea, whatever. We didn't die. It's definitely gonna take some time for the fish to adjust though. But after that, it's gonna get really good. I'm hoping the lake's starting to turn over, post-turnover rocks. And if you're wondering why I didn't park the boat in the shop, it's because they're redoing the floor, which looks really nice right now. I can walk on it now, park on it tomorrow. Yeah, it was just really stinky in here, so I didn't even get to stay here. I had to stay at Ripple-Lip's place, which was very gracious of them. But it'll be good. It'll be good. I'm also gonna sell my Ulterra trolling motor. Talk more about that later. What's up, fisher people? First few things I want to accomplish today are checking some water temps in the bay and out of the bay, and then seeing if I got fish in the bay. Because if I get some windy trips, I can still get some clients on some fish in the bay, and it's not so big a deal. If it's a windy day and we got to get out on the main lake, I might be in trouble. So I'm hoping some fish are going to start to move in the bay now that it's 50 to 55 degrees in here. There's a little bit of life in here, but not a ton. Then the other thing I want to do is talk about my trolling motor situation. Like I said, I am going to sell the Ulterra. I already have a Terova, so I'm back to manual deploy, which, truth be told, that's what I wanted to begin with. I wanted a 72-inch shaft, 36 volt, 112 pound thrust Terova when I got my boat. But it was during COVID, and the only thing they had was a 60-inch shaft, 36 volt, 112 pound thrust Ulterra. And I couldn't get a Terova till like June or August, or July or August. So I was like, well, I gotta have something. So I just got it. But there's a couple reasons I didn't want the Ulterra. One was, in case for some reason it doesn't deploy or stow, I didn't want to be in that trouble situation with clients. And as you can see, I fish a lot during cold weather. When you get below freezing, if that Ulterra freezes, you can have problems with deploying and stowing. So I lived with the Ulterra for a while. It was great. It's super nice to just be able to push a button, drop it in the water. But it had its drawbacks. And I had some troubles occasionally with the stow and deploy, and had to get a few things fixed. And most recently the motherboard went out, so they have to replace a new motherboard. So it's gonna be like completely refurbished. They also fixed the shaft and the lower unit and the pivot pin and the ramp. It's still under warranty for another 6-8 months or something like that until the middle of April. So it probably makes sense for somebody else, just not for me when I'm there every day and my business depends on it. It's a great thing to have, it just doesn't work for me, so I gotta get rid of it. I'm back to the Terova. And now that we got that covered, I'm gonna see if I can catch some fish in the bay first, and then I'm gonna try to see how nasty the main lake is and whether I can get out there, look at the water temps, look for some fish out there. Supposed to have a client tomorrow, supposed to be really windy again. Don't know if it's gonna happen, we'll find out. And like I said, after this extreme weather change, big temp drops, stupid massive winds, really stirring up the water. You can barely see your minnow in here right now. I'm not expecting great fishing today, I'm really not. But I'm gonna drop a few minnows, maybe a jigging rabbit, and just see if some of these bay fish do actually bite. And then try to go out on the main lake and see if some of those fish bite. If anything, it might be okay this afternoon, but I have pretty low expectations. Things have really changed the last few days. The water's very stirred up from the wind, but it might be in the middle of turnover now. 56 degrees at the mouth of the bay. I'm guessing the main lake's 50, maybe 56 as well, if not 57, 8. This might not be a big fish catching video. I wish that Ulterra had like a backup plan. Like I wish if the Ulterra didn't deploy or sew on its own, you could essentially flip a switch and turn it into a Terova and do it manually. But there are some clunky things you have to do with manual stowing and stuff like that, and when it gets stuck and whatnot. The more you use it, the more it wears out. I use it a lot, so that's why it needs a lot of parts replaced. But now that it's gonna be like basically refurbished brand new, I was like, I found a Terova, I'm gonna get it now, and then it's gonna be in really good shape for whoever uses it next. I felt like that made sense. I also feel the need to reiterate that Ulterra is a great product, and they've done a lot of amazing things with it. What you can do with the push of a button is incredible. There's pros and cons to my Terova, there's pros and cons to the Ulterra. For a guy that fishes 120, 30, 40 times a year, I don't think the Ulterra made sense for me anymore. Plus, I really wanted a 72-inch shaft. That was like the real kicker for me. I could have gotten a longer shaft on my Ulterra, but that would have cost $500 as well. So if I'm gonna spend an extra $500, why not just sell the Ulterra and get the Terova that I wanted to begin with, you know? I do have a couple marks tight to bottom though. Maybe I can get them to go. At least it's not 60-mile-per-hour wind today, but it's definitely not calm. Walleye chop is a good thing, but 3 days in a row with 50, 60-mile-an-hour stuff, that doesn't help anybody. It's so dirty. Crap. I did just have a thump bite while I was dragging it. Pitched back and drug it. I don't see the typical walleye slashes though. It might have been a smallmouth. There's more life in the bay than there was. I'm marking a lot of bigger, like not clouds of bait, so not smelt necessarily, but like defined small fish on side imaging and down imaging and 2D sonar, which I don't know if they're perch, white bass, Cisco's, maybe big smelt, but that stuff's showing up in here. So that's something. And it's 25 feet. So if those are like Cisco's in 25 feet, that would tell you things might have turned and flipped. It's not like the wind's pushing into the spot, it's pushing away from it. So to start to see that life up here in 25 feet, I'd say we're in the middle of turnover in the process of turning after the big wind days the last few days. It's very close. And when this settles down, like I would imagine 2-3 days from now, we could start to see like gangbuster fall bite maybe. I'm still in the bay, but I moved to a little different spot and I'm seeing some fish real tight to bottom in 21 feet. And I had a little nose bumper. I could just feel him like nudge it when it was sitting down there. Did it again just now, but they're not eating it. Doing it again. I don't know if that's a walleye or not. There's life in the bay now. I don't know if it'd be my go-to yet, but if forced to fish here, you might be able to make it work. Hooked up on the jigging Rap. First hookup of the day. I went to pop, but I popped into slack and I was like, uh-oh, a fish did that. I should have something there. Feels like a decent fish too. Feels like a very decent fish. Better get my net going. Get this other rod out of the way. The old chrome perch. It's not a slacker fish at all. Got some pressure and head shakes. Since he slacked it up, it's not snagged. He must have bit it. Oh yeah, gorgeous fish. Wow. Wow. Let's land this one. Let's land this one, huh? Yeah, baby. Woo-hoo-hoo. In the bay. A tanker. A big fat walleye. That is pretty. Get this hook out of him. Or maybe show him with the hook first. Very light colored fish right now. Let's tape him quick. That's a fat, perky 22-incher. He doesn't want to bend his tail much. He's going to make for an odd photo. But we got one to go. Cool. Bay fish. Good start. 12-17, first blood. And the old chrome perch set is missing a front hook because of a catfish. They can see a jigging Rap as dirty as it is. I went to rip like that and I didn't feel any bait, so I just reeled down to it and set the hook. He came from behind, pushed it, slacked it up big time. 2 casts later, got another one. Starting to fire off. I dig this. I dig it a lot. He slacked it up hard too. I felt the slack that time. Felt a thump. Line slacked, reeled down to it. Set the hook, got him. Littler walleye. And some people have been asking me, now that you got that 360 camera, why do you keep turning it like that? Well, this camera has 2 lenses. It's got a regular lens that I'm using right now and a 360 lens. I could use a 360 lens all the time, but those files are huge. Imagine, like, instead of just filming a square, you're filming everything. The file sizes are like 5-6 times bigger. So if you recorded hours worth of footage on 360, it takes up way too much space. So it's kind of a specialty thing. I just like to pull it out and use it once in a while. And I usually don't wind up pulling it out when it's like cold and windy and I got gloves on and all that kind of stuff. It's like I need time to like mess with that stuff. But so sometimes I do still have to turn the camera if I'm using the regular lens. There's a bit of an art form to the whole thing, to like moving the lens around and capturing the shot. It's part of the sport for me, kind of too. So sometimes I like hide it and try to make the transition seamless, and sometimes I show it on purpose because I think it's kind of fun. So we did that last video on turnover, right? And it's hard to tell exactly sometimes when the lake's turning, when it's not, when it's done. And I think, from what I understand, there's like a kind of a mini turnover that happens when you first start to get the temps dropping. And then there's the big full turnover that usually happens in that 50-55 degree range. And it definitely gets accelerated by a big wind event. That's what gets things started to cycle a lot. So whether or not we were in that early mini turnover phase when I was out there with Mike and Ethan, I don't know for sure. I just knew it was getting close. Now after the big winds the last 3 days, at least this bay, I'm thinking this bay has turned over potentially. It's so hard to say for 100% certainty. But the point being, there's actually fish in it now. They're starting to bite in it now. The water in the bay, depending on where you are, ranges from 50 to 56 degrees. So it's in that zone. I'm seeing a lot of stuff up shallow. There's a lot of evidence that this bay has potentially turned over. The best way to really know is when you start catching fish shallower and you start catching a lot more fish than you were catching before, and it starts to feel like a good bite again. The fact that we caught no fish in this bay last time and now I'm catching some fish and marking some fish, something's obviously changed. Whether they're just moving into the bay and they're finally here, or the bay's turned over and conditions are getting better. Hard to say for sure. So we had the 2 jigging Rap fish. I wanted to throw a minnow back there, see if they'd take the minnow. First cast, we got a minnow fish. Gave it a pop as it was falling. I felt him thump it, set the hook, and there he was. Got a little head shake action down there. What do we got? How big are you? Nice fish. Nice minnow fish. That's your classic 18, 19 inch, probably 18. Classic Sakakawea. This is what brings most people to this lake, are limits of these fatties. You got the white VMC hammerhead jig there. Link in the description. Nice 18-inch walleye. Couldn't get him vertically, got him pitching, working it a little bit. So a few days ago, before all this wind and stuff came up, most of the fish we were catching were straight vertical, just barely moving the dumb thing, and they were so lethargic. Now they seem to want to chase it a little bit. More evidence of a post-turnover bite, in my opinion. So minnows, jigging wraps, moving the minnow, not just dead sticking it, not being lazy with it. There's obviously a fair number of fish back there, and I've been on spot lock the whole time, going right back to the well. And the fish that I'd seen under the boat that were pancaked, I just kind of kept scooting ahead of them a little bit to see if I could see more fish, and I kind of did. But then I started pitching back to the ones that were behind me, trying to get them on the move, moving the bait back to the boat. That seems to work. So like normally my jig stroke, I like to just kind of like do this sort of thing and get it to hover in the air a little bit and pull it. And the last one, I was kind of giving it a more of a twitch, more like a mini jig and wrap thing. And that seemed to entice that bite. As soon as I twitched it and it started to fall, thump. So you can kind of aggressively fish live bait, if that makes sense. Meaning like I'm still not moving it very much, but I'm moving it more abruptly. So instead of just that little pull, I'm giving it a short little pop. And you can do that vertically too, where instead of just lifting it like this, you can kind of give it a little pop and try to entice a bite that way, try to trigger something. The fish are responding to snappier movements today is the point, whether it's a jigging wrap or a minnow. Even more evidence of a post-turnover bite for this bay. Whether or not the main lake's the same way, it's hard to say. If I catch one more fish, well, maybe even if I don't, I might head out to the main lake and see what I can find. I know what I got here. I know it's fishable now. I know I got fish around. Mission accomplished in that sense. So the main lake's closer to 58 degrees. Water's a little clearer, not quite as dirty. Whether or not things have turned over out here, I'm a little more skeptical. Different parts of the lake can turn over at different stages and different times. Shallower water will turn over first because it cools down quicker, assuming it's even deep enough to stratify in the first place. If you got an 18, 20 foot lake, there's no such thing as turnover. If you got a 40, 50 foot lake, the lake will turn. So I don't know, I'm gonna fish the first spot I pulled up to out here. Didn't see a ton of life, but since we're just scouting and playing, just want to see what's going on. If I do mark fish, whether or not they bite, all that kind of good stuff. Got a main lake biter on the jig and wrap, and this fish is going nuts. I don't know what kind it is. If it's a walleye, it's a good one. The dead stick minnow always presents a problem. Maybe I should put it on the other side of the boat from now on. I don't know. This is a walleye. It's big. It's got a lot of pike characteristics to it, except for the fact that it's stopped running right now. Can't really move it very much. Oh, buddy. Loosen that drag and let him pull. Another big run straight down. Walleye point. Walleye or pike, walleye or pike. How about a big drum snagged in the belly? It's a huge drum snagged in the belly. Ugh. That's unfortunate. Look at this. Look at that. Could have been so many things. I didn't expect that. I guess I should have found a little stack of fish here sitting off this shelf on the main lake, 18 feet down to 35. So I just went up on the shelf and pitched down, and first cast I got popped and didn't hook up. I'm just gonna keep pitching off the shelf and working it up and see if I can get another bite here though. Usually when you get a good thump on a jig, you hook up if it's a walleye. We hooked up that time. That was kind of fun. I think it's a bass though, maybe. It's acting kind of smallmouthy. It's a nice fish though, whatever it is. Now it's kind of settling in. I don't know yet. Might be a walleye. Might be a walleye. Still likes to go a lot sideways, but those are smallmouthy kind of head bobs. Bang, 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 bang. If it's a walleye, it's a pretty decent one. I got some guesses about tough smallmouth, white bass. There we go. That's why I missed that other pop. Aha. Now it makes some sense. You can miss some white bass when you get thumped on a jig. They got a kind of a tiny mouth, you know, and they take a lot of slashes at it, often miss baits. Might just be on a big school of white bass here, hard to say. But definitely in the spring, white bass and walleyes run together. And we've had some days, you might remember in that last video with the Upgren boys, we were catching a little bit of both in the same spot. So I'm not counting it out yet. White bass population, or at least catches of white bass, has been way down the last couple of years in Sakakawea, but this fall, the last 10 days, has just been crazy white bass everywhere. Stuff's kind of moving around too. So like I said, the first main lake spot I saw was 58. This is 55. Kind of depends on where the wind's pushing stuff around too. So it's pushing off this shelf. Maybe it's pushing warm water away and the cold water needs coming up. And over there, I was on the front end of a hump and the wind was blowing into it. And it might have been pushing warm water up onto that hump. So when things start to change temperature-wise, you'll notice a lot of disparity from spot to spot, especially in the spring, but again in the fall. A lot of times, summertime, you go around and every spot you go to, unless you're in a bay, is darn near the same temp, but that is not the case right now. Some places will change a lot faster than others. Shallower water changes faster than deeper water. We also got a lot of dirty water pushing off of this flat ahead of the shelf, and white bass love that dirty water. Like mud lines are a good thing for walleyes, but white bass love like super, super dirty water. So far, it would seem the main lake fish are a little more finicky if they're actually walleyes here. More evidence for not having turned on the main lake, only the bay. I haven't made a super huge run today, just kind of sticking around the bay, checking out some things. So to answer the question, has Sakakawea turned over yet? Maybe some of the bays, maybe some of the other shallower stuff like in the far western regions of the lake. Has the big lake turned over yet? Probably not. But I'd say it's getting darn close. Probably won't take but a few more cold, windy days, week at the most. Anyway, if you like this video, if it was helpful, I'd appreciate it if you hit the button to say so. Let YouTube know that it was helpful. Other people can find it better. Maybe subscribe to the channel. Maybe be super generous and support the channel through Patreon. And sign up for the fishing reports and stuff like that on there. And until next time, later, fisher people.